happening tonight in Vancouver.
This is just one more complication in a very complicated election.
No, you can't show up to a polling place on voting day if you've been asked to self-isolate due to COVID-19. What can and should be done to ensure this doesn't happen next time we're in the middle of a vote during a global pandemic?
They need to do something besides turn a blind eye, which is what they're doing now.
Even though it's mandatory to wear masks while sailing on BC Ferries, one customer is concerned that staff are failing to enforce the mask mandates.
We are gonna fill this house and we are gonna roar with all of our hearts for those children that didn't make it home from school.
Residential school survivors to be honored at the next BC Lions home game ahead of the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation.
This is City News Everywhere.
It was a heartbreaking case that devastated much of the Lower Mainland and beyond. Now, 2 years after the tragic death of 14-year-old Carson Crimeni in a Langley skate park, a charge of manslaughter has been laid. Langley RCMP say a 20-year-old man has been charged, but his name will not be released as he was underage at the time of Carson's death. The young man surrendered himself to police after a warrant was issued. Crimeni died of an apparent overdose in August 2019 while he was with a group of older teens. His final moments, filmed and shared on social media, shocked and haunted the entire community as the teens continued to film the incident instead of helping Carson.
I personally strongly believe that more than one person should be charged. I believe, the people that were filming it, the people that, were denying him help intentionally, definitely deserve to be charged as well. But I do believe the one person they're charging is the person who is directly responsible for giving him the drugs that overdosed him and caused his death. So it's a start, and it's, at least somebody's being charged.
RCMP say investigators spoke to more than 100 witnesses and received more than 100 tips in the case. The accused will appear in court on October 20th.
They are stressed and frustrated by what they see as rising crime in their neighborhood.
More police patrols in downtown to deal with rising crime, what businesses say would actually help, and the worries coming from advocates about how this could impact the most vulnerable.
It's at a time when many people are afraid to go out into public. And then, of course, there may be people who are in fact sick.
If you have to self-isolate because of COVID-19 and your self-isolation continues through to September 20th, some bad news. You will not be able to be at a polling station on Election Day. Now, if you wanted to cast a vote, the only other way to do that would be through mail-in ballot. But the deadline to request one has already come and gone.
A rule on the Elections Canada website states, unfortunately, after September 14th, those who have or believe they have COVID-19 and who have not already applied to vote by mail will not be able to vote. One political scientist thinks this will contribute to a lower turnout, and perhaps for one group in particular.
People who are falling sick now are predominantly unvaccinated individuals, and the party that has become the sort of the movement for anti-vaxxers is the People Party. So if there are unvaxxed people who are too ill to vote, it may impact on their vote more than it would for other parties.
Telford hopes this motivates Elections Canada to make changes that allow people to vote through other means.
Figuring out how to do online voting securely might be something that motivates agencies on this.
There is a law that we operate elections under called the Elections Canada Act. And it states that after day 6, so that was Tuesday, at 6 o'clock, your only option is to vote in person.
Morant says by law they must do this to prepare the lists for in-person voting day and remove anyone who would have voted by mail.
Was this something that was anticipated by Elections Canada? The fact that there could be people who, because of isolating, would not be able to vote in person?
We talked about the alternatives of voting all the way through this election, and we really talked about all of these different options in light of the pandemic.
As for whether the rule will be enforced, Morant says the agency will not direct poll workers to ask, but it does expect people will follow the law that requires them to self-isolate. As for plans to make changes so that this doesn't happen again,
Elections Canada can put forward recommendations, but it has to be passed through Parliament. And until that's changed, we have to operate under the parameters of the existing law.
In New Westminster, Ria Renouf, City News.
No enforcement. Nobody coming around and reminding them to obey the mask mandate.
Passengers on BC Ferries have had to wear their masks on sailings since August 25th. While the ferry service is reminding customers to comply with the mask orders, one customer says they saw multiple people ignoring the rules and that crew members weren't doing anything about it.
When I started looking around, I was surprised to see the number of people either with no mask at all or with it around their chin or over their mouth but not their nose.
Diane Terrell was sailing from Tsawwassen to Swartz Bay on a ferry with vehicles packed end to end. She typically likes to sit in her car for the sailing, but she had to exit her vehicle.
And at one point I started counting, and just from my seat in the forward lounge I could see 12 people that didn't have a mask on. There was one announcement at the beginning of the sailing, tucked in between the how you put your life jacket on and the what's on offer in the cafeteria. And that was it. There were not frequent announcements. So yeah, I mean, it just seemed to me that there was not any will to enforce.
Deborah Marshall with BC Ferries says more security personnel are on board some vessels, and those who fail to comply could be banned from traveling on ferries.
Well, we have had some reports of customers who are causing disturbances because they're refusing to wear masks. And we have added extra security on our vessels where available to assist our employees with dealing with such customers. I think you have to keep in mind that BC Ferries is not an enforcement agency, and if it's necessary to call the police, we certainly do that.
But Marshall did not say if there were any discussions to put police officers on vessels or what would be done in an escalated situation besides bringing it to the attention of senior staff on board. On Terrell's trip, she says she didn't see any crew members walking around enforcing the mask policy.
I think to have a policy and then not enforce it, it sends the wrong message. You know, the lip service is a policy, but the reality is do what you want.
Eric McNeely with the BC Ferry and Marine Workers Union says abusive staff and low personnel levels may be affecting the way policy enforcement is handled.
Ferry workers have been frontline workers throughout three and moving into the fourth wave. And they've continued to face quite a bit of abuse. Also compounding that, I would say, would be staffing levels are at probably the lowest staffing levels they've ever had within the fleet.
And so I understand that the staff don't want to get involved in it, but they need to do something besides turn a blind eye, which is what they're doing now.
In West Vancouver, Kier Junos, City News. COVID-19 numbers are going up again in BC. Today, our province reported 706 new cases, up from the 661 recorded between Tuesday and Wednesday. 4 more people have died of the virus. Hospital numbers are up too at 291 today, but the number of people in the ICU has dropped by 3 to 134. Between September 8th and 14th, people not fully vaccinated made up more than 76% of all new cases. After factoring for age, people not vaccinated are 35 times more likely to be hospitalized than those who are fully vaccinated.
2 weeks ago, we presented modeling on the direction of this wave. The high-end scenario of that model projected over 300 intensive care admissions by the end of this month. But recent trends show that we are exceeding that high-end projection and that we may run out of staffed intensive care beds within the next 10 days.
Several restrictions are being reinstated across Alberta after a state of emergency was declared Wednesday. This includes a mandatory work-from-home order and indoor masking rules. The province is also introducing a proof of vaccination program for non-essential indoor settings, which marks a major change, of course, for Premier Jason Kenney. Saskatchewan's government also announced plans today to introduce a proof of vaccination program beginning next month. Vancouver police are searching for the person who shot and killed a 35-year-old man in downtown Vancouver. The victim has been identified as Amandeep Manj. Police say although his slaying was brazen and targeted, it's too early to say if it's linked to gangs. Manj was found dead in a vehicle in the underground parkade of the Fairmont Pacific Rim Hotel yesterday afternoon. The shooting was followed early this morning by a vehicle fire on the city's east side, but investigators are still working to confirm a link between the two. No arrests have been made yet.
We also know that when a shooting of this nature does occur, it always poses the risk of a retaliation, and that's why, or that's where public safety does come into risk, as there always could be innocent bystanders.
Investigators are urging people to stay vigilant, and anyone with information is asked to call Vancouver Police or Crime Stoppers.
They are stressed and frustrated by what they see as rising crime in their neighborhood.
Vancouver Police putting up more boots on the ground here on Granville Street in downtown, which the force says is one of the hardest hit areas for crime. And while the department says it's targeting chronic offenders, there are worries that the homeless and vulnerable might be severely impacted by the increasing patrols. This Granville business says patrols have helped before, especially in the back alley, where it's spent at least $50,000 on security measures.
We try to use this area to jump on this through here. We've added all this extra barbed wire now. I mean, this, if you look at this lock here, we've had to cut and replace all of this multiple times. Anything to do to help prevent, to create a safer environment, just draws more people here. So police presence is never a bad thing. I think it's something nice for the community to see, and definitely help in the times, where we kind of find the slower times.
Vancouver Police Department officers are being redeployed on foot and on bicycles to Granville Street, the West End, and other neighborhoods.
Glass smash mischiefs, so cases where people have broken glass between June 1st and September 15th, they're up 100% in the downtown core from 2020.
This comes after an open letter from NPA councillors Sarah Kirby-Young, Lisa Dominato, and Rebecca Bly. The letter says it hears local concerns and is taking steps with appropriately funding our police force so they can respond to emergencies, as well as proactively address vandalism, crime, and safety issues. The letter also calls for mental health, addiction, and housing support.
It's very unclear how deploying more police actually addresses those fundamental problems. More street deployment of police officers is designed to target people who are homeless. Those are the people who are on the street. So I don't see how the police can both claim that they're increasing their street presence and not targeting the very people who live on the street.
For the pawn shop, it says it's not all about officers. The owner says events like the Vancouver Mural Fest takeover also help.
The more people we can have walking around, the safer the street is.
In Vancouver, Crystal Ladaris, City News.
How safe will you be casting your ballot? This federal election campaign has been dogged by anti-mask and anti-vaccine protesters, but we'll tell you why Elections Canada doesn't believe you should face any disruptions when you mark your X on Monday.
It will be a sea of orange at BC Place next week as residential school survivors are honored ahead of the first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation.
It was a dream for me, an idea that I had that maybe survivors and their families could go to one of these football games and be honored there.
And there will be hundreds of survivors and families honored by thousands, and a special orange shirt for the movement she founded, created by Indigenous artist Corinne Hunt.
The idea that 10,000 people will be wearing this in the stadium, 10,000 people will be roaring. They will be saying, give us peace, give us compassion, give us love. And that's what I hope for this day.
The confirmation of 215 children in unmarked graves at the residential school in Kamloops, shining a spotlight this year for everyone on the devastation First Nations people have always known.
This truly is a unique way that we stand here together to not only acknowledge, but stand in solidarity to bring awareness to Orange Shirt Day.
When you wear your orange shirt, you are making a statement that the truth of those children is going to be honored.
Webstead says the Lions used to give her community little orange footballs, which sparked the thought, wouldn't it be something to have an entire stadium try to understand their experience?
This is, and I'll try not to cry, it's a dream come true for me to have survivors and their families honored at the September 24th game.
For City News in Victoria, I'm News 1130's Lisa Yuzda.
Tougher new public health restrictions come into effect at the same time as vaccine passports in Alberta. Confused? So are some members of Edmonton's business community.
Extremely confusing and convoluted way to implement what is essentially a vaccine passport program like many other provinces have.
Punita McBrien with Edmonton's Downtown Business Association tells me despite the confusion, a vaccine passport is what a lot of business owners have been needing for the last several weeks. The one thing that kept her up last night, she says, is the mandatory work from home order, something that has devastated downtown offices and the businesses that depend on those workers.
And so that's something that we're going to have to work on and get some answers on, is whether employers can be exempted from the mandatory work from home order if they know that all their team members are vaccinated.
On the hospitality side, Jim Skagos runs Deluxe Burger Bar. He opened the restaurant in the summer of 2020 and says he only survived because of the support of the community, his landlord, and his staff. Now he says he's trying to protect them.
I don't have myself to worry about. Oh, I have staff to worry about too. Right? Yeah. I mean, a lot of my cooks and stuff like that, they have 3 and 4 kids to support.
Skagos tells me that he welcomes the vaccine card system to keep staff and patrons safe, adding these new public health restrictions impact his business not only literally, but by also creating uncertainty and fear among patrons.
People think, well, just because you're not actually locked down, that it doesn't affect your business, but it really does. I mean, it's just it's the fear out there that ICU is almost 100% full now.
I don't think clarity was a strong point yesterday in the announcement.
Jimmy Shuchuk, an Edmonton restaurateur and caterer, also trying to navigate the confusion of rapidly changing public health restrictions. He has clients that have had to move and postpone their weddings multiple times. And on the restaurant side of things, enforcement of the new vaccine passport system is on mind.
I think we're at a little bit of a breaking point where people, operators tried to be very accommodating in the past and be very reasonable with people. I think those conversations are going to become a lot more short.
Adding that after a year of the pandemic, those in the hospitality industry roll with the punches.
Hospitality is going to do what hospitality has done the whole time, and even pre-pandemic is keep our patrons safe. So that's going to be the go forward for the industry.
In Edmonton, Darcy Ropchan, City News.
Meanwhile, Health Canada has given full approval of the Pfizer and Moderna COVID-19 vaccines for those ages 12 and up. That's an upgrade from the previous emergency authorization status that the vaccines were granted. Also, in a move that has many Canadians scratching their heads, the federal agency is also giving new names to 3 of the currently approved vaccines. The Pfizer vaccine will now be known as Comirnaty. The Moderna shot is being dubbed Spikevax, while the AstraZeneca vaccine is being named Vaxzevria. Just to be clear, only the names are being changed, and no changes are being made to the actual vaccines.
If Alberta had moved forward when other provinces were doing it, things might be better right now.
Liberal leader Justin Trudeau pointing the finger at Alberta Premier Jason Kenney for the explosion of COVID cases infecting Albertans. Trudeau calling out Kenney for not implementing vaccine passports soon enough.
We've demonstrated that we are there to work. We're even going to foot the bill for provinces that want to do it. For a long time, Alberta was a holdout, even as already in Quebec, while we were gathering last night in a pub, we knew that everyone had shown a proof of vaccination to be in that room.
With more than 18,000 cases, Alberta has declared a health emergency. Wednesday, Kenney doing his best to backtrack after opening the province to business as usual, July 1st.
We were wrong in talking about moving this from pandemic management to endemic management in July and August.
Well, there's no question that Mr. Kenney is to blame here and that his leadership has been horrible.
Kenney declaring a health emergency as hospital beds are overwhelmed by patients suffering and dying from COVID-19.
I don't apologize for the decision to relax public health restrictions in the summer.
With only days to go before the federal election, Liberal leader Justin Trudeau is using the outbreak in Alberta as a warning.
Leadership matters at whatever level. The choices we make on who to elect to lead the government through a time of crisis, whether it's at a provincial level or at a federal level, dictate how we're going to do.
In Ottawa, Nigel Newlove, City News.
When they go to vote, they will be able to vote in a safe and secure environment.
Elections Canada is giving assurances it will do all it can to keep Canadians safe as we cast our ballots on voting day, even with the tense environment that has surrounded this campaign. On top of the addition of new COVID protocols, returning officers in each riding are aware of the aggressive and disruptive anti-vaccine and anti-mask protests that followed leaders as they crisscrossed the country for the last month. While officials are not anticipating major issues, they will be prepared to handle any situation.
We are always ready for things that could happen, and we have measures in place to address those.
Some polling stations will have security on hand, and every returning officer has access to local law enforcement if needed. Mask mandates will also be enforced in all jurisdictions that have them, so if masks are required and you don't have a medical exemption, you will be refused entry to a polling station if you don't cover up. Causing any interference to the voting process is against the law.
You don't have a right to go in and disrupt. You don't have a right to intimidate electors. Those things are covered under the Canada Elections Act, and appropriate measures would be taken.
While this has been a tense and divided campaign, officials running the election are hopeful Monday will be much like the 4 days of advance polls, where there were no major issues, just a few isolated incidents. Cormac McSweeney, City News, Ottawa.
It was a gorgeous day with plenty of sun, and we sure hope you enjoyed it, because tomorrow, the Lower Mainland is expected to be drenched by a powerful rainstorm. Starting Friday, we could see 50 millimeters of rain, if not more, and wind gusts of up to 50 kilometers an hour. A special weather statement is in effect for Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley. Here's meteorologist Michael Coos with your detailed forecast.
The wettest day of the season arrives on Friday. It's a full-blown fall storm for the last weekend of summer. Here's some of the cloud cover and precipitation embedded in there. Low remains to the north, but that low is going to, with its counterclockwise rotation, bring in the precipitation toward the south coast. You can see those initial bands of rain coming in early on Friday, but Friday first thing across the Lower Mainland, the precip is still going to be quite light. It's the afternoon when we get into this wave here. That's more substantial. That's tapping into that Pacific moisture through the afternoon, evening, and early overnight heading into Saturday. But once we get to Saturday first thing, at daybreak at around 7 a.m., we're starting to see the backside of that frontal boundary and the low that's embedded in there. It shoots off pretty quickly, and although there is still a risk for some of these pop-up showers into the afternoon with the instability, it's not consistent, it's not widespread all at once. What we are going to see is some sunny breaks, a few pop-up showers both Saturday and Sunday as that low remains locked into the north. It's rainy on Friday, 30 to 70 millimeters of precipitation, the heavier amounts on the North Shore out to the Tri-Cities and the higher elevations, lesser amounts down to the southwest. Some breaks and some pop-up showers Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Temperatures in the teens, rebounds quite nicely Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We see some sun and some drier conditions.
Vancouver's news is always available on the radio with News 1130 or online anytime at citynews1130.com. Your next edition of City News is tonight at 11. Thanks for watching and have a great night.